On the other side are the rabid far left, the Marxists, the communists, the socialists, the toxic Labor Party and the hateful Greens.
Are you xenophobic? Please explain.
Senator Hanson.
I'm quite happy to remove this because this is not what should belong in this parliament. I'm going to drive this party, Andrew, because one day I want one nation to take government. Present governments are encouraging separatism in Australia by providing opportunities, land, monies and facilities only available to Aboriginals. Along with millions of Australians, I am fed up to the back teeth with the inequalities that are being promoted by the government and paid for by the taxpayer under the assumption that Aboriginals are the most disadvantaged people in Australia. I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians. Between 1984 and 1995, 40% of all migrants into this country were of Asian origin. They have their own culture and religion, form ghettos and do not assimilate. Ridiculed by even their own councils if you fly the Australian flag. It's all right to see the Palestinian flag out in these protest rallies and all these other, even Hamas flags, terrorist flags. Immigrants must have fluent English and definitely no burqas. You've never explained to the Australian people why we should have high immigration. You can't even explain that. You don't want to because you can't. You're incompetent. Explain to them why you're bringing so many people into the country. I also want to thank the people out there who have stood by me and One Nation. I thank our candidates who have stood strong during these testing times and my amazing staff who have been with me from day one. Well, I've come down to Canberra to do some estimates, and I had to do some shopping because I like to cook for myself. And I went shopping, guess what? I'm sure many of you are used to this. You buy these cheap rubbish bags that split and break on you all the time. I'm over it. I'm so angry about this. And 25 cents a bag. I'm sure many of you know how I feel about that. Of course, I had to buy it, didn't I? Because I'm in Canberra and I didn't carry my own bags with me. So anyway, this is what you have to put up with. So for the cost of living, I'm telling Woolies and Coles, get your act together with the bags. You charge a fortune for it, cost of living, people can't afford it, and it's ridiculous. I'm sure you're making a fortune out of it.
All right, picture this. A red-headed firebrand from Queensland, 71 years old, walking back into the political arena like she owns the joint. Cameras flashing, journalists circling like hungry seagulls, and Pauline bloody Hanson standing there with that trademark smirk that says, "Told you so." You can almost hear the collective groan from Canberra's marble corridors, because somehow, against all odds, Pauline Hanson might have just outsmarted Australia's political elite. Before we wrap up this Pauline Hanson masterclass in outsmarting Canberra's elites, while Albo's still trying to figure out what just hit him, smash that like button harder than Pauline hits a press conference. Subscribe if you reckon the political elites had it too easy for too long. And grab the not far right, just right shirt, links in the description. Now, let's not sugarcoat it. Hanson's been written off more times than a dodgy ute at a mining site. Since first bursting onto the scene in '96, she's been the nation's political boomerang. You can throw her out, mock her, cancel her, but somehow she always swings back. And right now, while Anthony Albanese is juggling cost of living chaos, energy drama, and immigration headaches, Pauline's playing the long game. She's watching the chaos unfold like a pub regular watching a bar fight, sipping her drink with that "I bloody warned you" expression. Back when John Howard took the reins, Pauline was already stirring the pot. She'd been booted from the Liberal Party for being too controversial. Imagine that. Too controversial for the Libs in the 90s, and decided to run as an independent. The media pounced on her maiden speech like a pack of rabid dogs. Swamped by Asians, she said, and the backlash was nuclear. The left branded her a racist, the right distanced themselves, and the press turned her into a national punchline. But here's the twist, she won. Against all odds, she snagged a seat in Parliament and became a thorn in the government's side. While the political elite were busy polishing speeches and pretending everything was fine, Hanson tapped into something raw, resentment. She didn't talk like a politician. She talked like your aunt after a couple of Bundy rums, firing off opinions you might not agree with but couldn't ignore. She railed against immigration, political correctness, the so-called special treatment of Aboriginal communities, all wrapped in her fiery conviction that ordinary Aussies were being ignored. And let's be real, plenty of people quietly nodded along, even if they wouldn't admit it out loud. Fast forward a few years, she loses her seat, her party implodes, the headlines fade, and everyone assumes Pauline Hanson is finished. The political class moves on, patting themselves on the back for defeating the populist threat. But here's the thing about underestimating someone like Pauline: she thrives on it. She feeds off the outrage, the mockery, the dismissals. She turns it into fuel. 2 decades later, while Malcolm Turnbull is barely holding on to power and Labour's tangled in its own mess, boom, she's back. 2016. Senate seat, Queensland. Pauline Hanson 2.0. And it wasn't a fluke. This time, she had strategy. She'd learned from her early days, the infighting, the chaos, the scandals, and built a tighter ship. One Nation became more than just a protest vote. It became a pressure valve for Australians who felt ignored by both major parties. Immigration? Too high. Cost of living? Out of control. Climate policies? A joke. Hanson had something to say about everything, from banning the burqa to doubting climate science. And every time the media mocked her, her base grew stronger. Every sneer from a journalist was another vote in her pocket. Meanwhile, Anthony Albanese and his crew have been doing their best to manage a country that feels like it's falling apart at the seams. Inflation biting, housing unattainable, power bills through the roof, and while Albo's trying to spin positive headlines about clean energy transitions and inclusive growth, Pauline's out there filming herself winging about Woolies charging 25 cents for a dodgy plastic bag. You laugh, but that's the genius of it. She's not pretending to be a stateswoman. She's pretending to be you. Angry, fed up, and convinced the system's rigged. Now, the big question: did she actually outsmart Australia's political elite? You bet your last sausage roll she did. Because while the suits in Canberra keep fighting over ideology and image, Hanson's been quietly carving out power. One Nation now holds 4 Senate seats and came this close to snagging a 5th. Her party's polling higher than ever, 11%, even 14% in some polls. That's double what she pulled at the last election. And here's where it gets juicy. If the coalition ever finds itself desperate to form government, they might have to crawl, hat in hand, to One Nation. Imagine that, Anthony Albanese trying to hold the moral high ground, while a resurgent Pauline Hanson's holding the balance of power. That's the part that makes the political class shudder. Because Hanson isn't just surviving, she's shaping the conversation. Every time Albo talks about multicultural harmony, someone's in the comments section yelling, "Pauline was right." Every time Labour defends immigration, another voter quietly slips towards the right. She's not leading the polls, but she's leading the mood. And that's even more dangerous for the establishment. What's wild is how she's turned her so-called weaknesses into strengths. Her critics call her outdated, offensive, even intolerant, and she just doubles down. She knows her brand. She's anti-elite, anti-globalist, anti-spin. And in an age where politicians sound like our speechwriters, that raw authenticity hits differently. Whether you love her or hate her, Pauline Hanson feels real. Anthony Albanese, by comparison, can come across like a bureaucrat reading talking points while trying not to upset anyone. And here's the kicker: she's playing the long game. Hanson knows she won't be around forever, but she's grooming the next generation. Her daughter's already dipped her toes into politics, nearly nabbing a Senate spot in Tasmania. If that happens, we're not just talking about a comeback, we're talking about a dynasty. The thought of a Hanson family legacy in Parliament is enough to make Labour strategists lose sleep. Still, don't think this is some fairy tale redemption arc. Hanson's political career is littered with controversy. Her views on race, immigration, and Indigenous affairs have sparked national outrage more times than anyone can count. She's been called divisive, dangerous, and out of touch. But here's the uncomfortable truth: she's also been consistent. She says the same things now she said in 1996. And after years of being dismissed as fringe, the country's starting to catch up to her rhetoric. High immigration, housing strain, cultural tension, the topics she was crucified for mentioning are now front-page debates. You can hate her methods, but you can't deny her foresight. And Albanese? Poor bloke's in a bind. If he ignores her, she grows. If he attacks her, she thrives. If he tries to co-opt her language on cost of living or social cohesion, he risks legitimizing her platform. It's a political trap with Hanson grinning in the middle, arms crossed, daring anyone to take her on. Every time Albo lectures the nation about unity, Hanson reminds her followers that the elites in Canberra don't get it. Every time he pushes climate reform, she points to the skyrocketing power bills. It's a game of political whack-a-mole, and Hanson's got infinite lives. It's also telling that while most politicians crumble under scandal or ridicule, Pauline Hanson just doesn't care. She's the Teflon senator. The media can mock her accent. The parliament can groan when she speaks. She just keeps going. That stubbornness, that refusal to play by Canberra's rules, is exactly why she's dangerous to the establishment. They can't predict her, can't control her, can't shame her into silence. And that's precisely why a growing chunk of Australians see her as the only one telling it like it is. Her critics love to point out that she rarely proposes detailed policy. But that's not the point. She's not a technocrat, she's a symbol. Pauline Hanson stands for rebellion against the political class itself. She's a walking, talking middle finger to the system, and when people feel like the system's left them behind, that finger starts looking awfully tempting. It's hard to say whether she genuinely believes she could lead the country one day. She's said as much, that she dreams of one nation taking government, but even she must know it's a stretch. Still, stranger things have happened in global politics. 10 years ago, people laughed at Donald Trump running for president. 5 years ago, they scoffed at Nigel Farage's Brexit crusade. And look where that got them. The world's gone mad, and in that chaos, populists like Hanson don't just survive, they thrive. So yeah, maybe she didn't outsmart them with spreadsheets or economic models. Maybe she didn't charm the media or the academics. But she outlasted them. She outlasted Howard, Rudd, Gillard, Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison, and now she's outlasting Anthony Albanese. While Albo's government burns political capital trying to please everyone, Hanson's been quietly cementing herself as the voice of everyone who's had enough. Every headline about rising immigration, every grocery bill that makes you swear under your breath, it all pushes people her way. And that's the bitter irony for the political elite. For 30 years, they've mocked Pauline Hanson as a relic, a sideshow, a political accident. But 3 decades later, she's still standing, louder, prouder, and polling higher than ever. Maybe she didn't outsmart them in the traditional sense. Maybe she just waited for them to self-destruct. Either way, she's still here. Still yelling. Still being asked to please explain. And while Albanese and his ministers scramble to control the narrative, Hanson's out there filming supermarket rants and calling out the elites for their hypocrisy, connecting directly with the kind of voters Labor used to own, the ones who don't trust the system anymore. The ones who've stopped believing that either major party gives a damn. She's not the future of Australian politics, but she's the warning shot, a reminder that when the elites lose touch, the outsiders step in. So, did Pauline Hanson outsmart Australia's political elite? Look around, mate. She's 71, still pulling headlines, still steering the national conversation, and still scaring the hell out of Anthony Albanese. If that's not outsmarting them, I don't know what is. Smash that like button if you enjoyed watching the government try to explain its way out of a burning paper trail. Subscribe if you reckon accountability shouldn't be a rare event. And as always, keep your eyes open, your beers cold, and your politicians on a short leash. Because if we don't hold them accountable, no one will. Oh, and grab the not far right, just right shirt, links in the description.